Io proporrei di cominciare, cosa dite? Allora, anzitutto, buongiorno a tutti, grazie mille per essere qua. Sappiamo che aprile è un mese, diciamo, carico di iniziative, carico di impegni, ma ci tenevamo ad avere questo incontro per due ragioni. In primo luogo, adesso tra pochi minuti lascerò il posto al nostro invitato, che è un professore che vi racconterà delle cose interessantissime, non solo relative alla digital fluency, che è la ragione principale per cui siamo qua oggi, perché l'Università di Parma è coinvolta in un progetto ormai da diversi anni, insieme a Bulgaria e Finlandia, e questo progetto sta cercando di capire, sta cercando di monitorare come possiamo migliorare la nostra abilità nell'information literacy, cioè nell'alfabetizzazione all'informazione, nell'alfabetizzazione ai media. Siamo fortemente esposti, viviamo in una quotidianità fortemente esposta ai media e siamo definiti la società dell'informazione, eppure nonostante questo ancora adesso vacilliamo quando si tratta di alcune competenze anche base. Quindi avevamo piacere a fare questo incontro, non solo perché per noi sono dati di ricerca importanti, quindi vi prego di prestare grande attenzione quando il professore vi chiederà di rispondere a dei questionari, ma anche perché trovavamo che fosse un'opportunità incredibile poter parlare con dei docenti che vivono di fatto nel futuro, perché ci presenterà, ci parlerà di intelligenza artificiale, di realtà virtuale, di cose a cui noi siamo, almeno questa è la mia impressione, siamo solo parzialmente esposti. Io ringrazio tutti i docenti coinvolti davvero, perché è stato un momento organizzativo molto bello per me, e ringrazio assolutamente tutti i partecipanti. Il professore ovviamente parlerà in lingua inglese, ma non abbiate timore, ci sono tantissime opportunità. Se qualcosa non è chiaro, semplicemente potete chiedercelo in privato, potete fare delle domande sia in italiano che in inglese, per noi non è rilevante. Io ho tradotto i questionari e alcune parti delle slide. Se però qualcosa non è chiaro, perché magari non è stato tradotto o perché magari è un concetto un pochino più ostico, non abbiate timori, perché qui siamo tre amici, quindi siamo veramente grati per il fatto che ciascuno di voi è salito a bordo. Qualcun altro vuole dire qualcosa o passo la parola al nostro ospite? Dico l'ultima cosa, sia la chat che il microfono sono due mezzi che vi incoraggiamo ad usare, perché ci piacerebbe che questo workshop, questo seminario che già è stato svolto uguale in Bulgaria e in Finlandia, ci piacerebbe diventasse una chiacchierata e uno scambio di opinioni e riflessioni, quindi sentitevi liberi davvero di parlare, intervenire come credete, se credete, e sentitevi liberi di parlare la lingua che preferite, perché anche noi parliamo un misto. Plamen, the floor is yours. I didn't introduce you. Would you like to introduce yourself? Would you like to share with us a little bit of what you do? And thank you very much for today.
I will share first the link to the presentation if some of you want to open the presentation on your own computer, if my screen is too small or for any other reason. And the next link that I'm sharing practically is information to my webpage, so I can save some time introducing myself. I'm in Minnesota, which is a northern state up on the Canadian border. I am native Bulgarian, but I had lived now in the United States longer than in Europe. And anything professionally, again, is in the link that I just shared with you. I would love to hear from you. Any questions that you might have, which I might not be able to answer, I'll make sure that I can connect you. I can direct you to somebody that can answer them. So please don't be coy, don't be shy, ask away. And with that, from what Julia was saying, I understand that we'll be talking about digital fluency. So without further ado, and I just learned what is afternoon in Italian, pomeriggio, right? Buon pomeriggio. So I'll try to remember it. I would love if I could speak Italian. As I told Julia, I just love listening it. I truly, truly, truly appreciated your staying so late in the day. If I knew that I would wake up 3 in the morning to attend Anna Maria's conference, we could have scheduled this earlier, but that's life. So you might not be fresh, but I'll try to keep it as lucid as possible. It's a lot of information. You might feel overwhelmed, but I really, truly will appreciate your participation. As Julia just shared with you, we will be trying to collect your answers and try to make the whole information literacy process much better for students, for the next generation of students. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for considering working today together. I see that you are not shy, on the other hand, using the chat session, which is great, because we would really appreciate if you use the chat session. If you want to take the microphone at any point, please do feel most welcome to interrupt me. If I don't express myself well, most probably Julia will help me explain something. If you don't feel confident in your English, that's no problem at all. Again, just ask. We can stop and we can work as a group. I usually tell my students, we are like the Marines. We don't leave anybody behind. If somebody feels behind, please don't be shy. Let us know. We'll help each other as a team. So what's the plan for today? Practically, we want to progress, starting with information literacy. We want to progress and see what is digital literacy, what is digital fluency. Why at all do we have to discuss this? Why is it so important for all of the students, not only for students for library and information science? What is the difference with these literacies? And again, why do you have to be cognizant? Why do you have to understand the difference? Then we will be taking the turn, and I will try to convince you that being digitally fluent nowadays means also understanding what extended reality is, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, realities which you most probably have heard, because everybody knows Mark Zuckerberg and everybody knows that Facebook is not anymore Facebook, but it's Meta, right? And then we will be discussing Education 4.0 and Industry 4.0, which is practically a reality nowadays. By the time you all graduate, we will be already in Industry 4.0, and Industry 4.0 would be expecting from you to be prepared for Industry 4.0. And in Industry 4.0, there are definitions which you most probably have heard, like Internet of Things, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and digital humanities, and so forth. And especially as journalists, you should be familiar with these terms, if not proficient, at least familiar with these terms. So we're going to touch on this. At any point, please do throw your thoughts in the chat session, even if they don't seem relevant specifically to what I am sharing with you right at this moment. Your thoughts will be appreciated. We had split the information in chunks, and after every chunk, we will be asking you to take survey questions. And those survey questions are very important for us. So please, please do participate, okay? So without further ado, I'll make a pause here to see if there's anything that you might want to ask or you might want to share. And if it's not, we'll dive right away. I'm going to share with you a third link. And that link is to the entire PDF document that we'll be covering probably in the next 30 or 40 minutes. And that is the information literacy framework, which is like a foundational piece of information in American libraries, in American academic libraries. And when I say academic libraries, please don't understand again, oh, this is regarding librarians, I don't have to have anything to do with that. Actually, this is a foundation that librarians use to introduce any kind of students at American institutions to become information literate. The framework, as you can see, consists of 6 frames. And starting from here, it's authority, information creation as a process. And each of the frames, we will be going one by one over each of the frames to see what the knowledge practices and dispositions are. And now we're going to play something like a game. I'm going to read each of the points, of the bullet points, and I want you to think, how does it apply to you? Do you recognize, when I read these points, do you recognize something that you have heard or you have done or you have thought of doing? And if you have an example in your mind, please do share it in the chat session. Don't be shy. Don't think that you might be wrong. Anything that spurs some thoughts in your mind, please do share it in your chat session. So the first frame is authority is constructed and contextual. Think, what do you understand under this? So the knowledge practices for authority to be constructed and contextuals, the first one is to define different types of authority, such as subject expertise. Think, for example, your chemistry teacher or journalism professor. She or he is an expert in that subject. Societal positions, think your Minister of Education, that's a public position, or special expertise, some author, some famous journalist, he also can be a special expert. Use research tools and indicators of authority to determine the credibility of sources, understanding the elements that might temper this credibility. So what does the second point mean? That authority can be fluctuant. It can be an authority, and at the next moment, it might not be an authority. An authority right now is a ministry in Russia convincing its people that the war in Ukraine is justified. In Russia, that's considered an authority, right? But we also have to think if it's an authority. So I really hope you're kind of getting the intricacies. Understand that many disciplines have a knowledge authorities in the sense of well-known scholars and publications that are widely considered standard. And yet, even in these situations, some scholars would challenge the authority of these sources. Again, the example with the ministry in Russia. Is it standard? Yes, it's standard in Russia, but how about globally? Okay. Recognize that authoritative content may be packaged formally or informally and may include sources of all media types. An example for you. The ministry posts on their webpage very formal communiques. But if you go to TikTok, you also will see that the war is raging there. There is a lot of information also on TikTok about the war in Ukraine. Acknowledge they are developing their own authoritative voices in a particular area and recognize the responsibilities this entails, including seeking accuracy and reliability, respecting intellectual property, and participating in communities of practice. So when you hear communities of practice, now we're talking about very academic environment. And in academic environment, very much like the fake news war, like the war, the information war in Ukraine, there are also different opinions. The authorities there are also contested. And you always have to consider this. You always have to think about this to be information literate. And the last point of the knowledge practices, understand the increasingly social nature of the information ecosystem where authorities actively connect with one another and sources develop over time. And I don't have to explain this to you probably because you're the generation of social media and you very well understand where it's heading. Okay, what should be your disposition when you construct your authority? You develop and maintain an open mind when encountering varied and sometimes conflicting perspectives. So vaccination can be a very good example. Nothing is wrong to be an anti-vaxxer if you're open-minded. It's totally normal to have different opinion, but you have to be open-minded. You have to consider other perspectives. Motivate themselves to find authoritative sources, recognizing that authority may be conferred or manifested in unexpected ways. Again, TikTok, I don't have to explain this. You probably understand it better than I do. Develop awareness of the importance of assessing content with a skeptical stance and with a self-awareness of your own biases and worldview. Again, if you're anti-vaxxer, there is nothing wrong to be an anti-vaxxer as far as you are self-aware that you might be biased. And the same goes for the for people who go for vaccination or abortion, anti-abortion. I mean, there are a lot of controversy in the world, and I bet that in Italy you can come up with sound examples, which I would greatly appreciate if you're sharing the chat session. Question traditional notions of granting authority and recognize the value of diverse ideas and worldviews. And this is very important. So we have to be tolerant. Whether we are vaxxers or anti-vaxxer, we have to be tolerant to the other side opinions and proofs. You are conscious that maintaining these attitudes and actions requires frequent self-evaluation. And it's all self-explanatory, I hope. So I'm going to pause here just for 30 seconds, 1 minute, because we don't have, unfortunately, much time. And I really want to see if you would be willing, able to share in the chat session some examples that come up to your mind. Thank you. First one to post gets virtual ice cream or something of that sort, but it will be virtual. So let's see. Okay, I'm going to move to the next slide. But again, if something comes up to your mind that is regarding the first slide, put it in the chat session. It would be appreciated, deeply appreciated. Okay, the next frame is information creation as a process. It is a process, not a final product. So the knowledge practices expect you to articulate the capabilities and constraints of information developed through various creation processes. You assess the fit between an information products creation process and a particular information need. So you're not doing information creation just for the sake of it. It's connected with some need, right? Articulate the traditional and emerging processes of information creation and dissemination in a particular discipline. Again, with the internet, everybody is an expert, which information literate person knows that this is not true. You're becoming an expert in a discipline that you think you're an expert. You can become an expert in a different discipline, but that usually takes time, right? Not like 10 minutes on the internet. Recognize that information may be perceived differently based on the format in which it is packaged. So text is pretty much 20th century. In the 21st century, we have other modes, right? And as journalists, you probably are much better aware than I am. Recognize the implications of information formats that contain static or dynamic information. And it's also very important. We'll be talking later about the data-driven information in 2022. Monitor the value that is placed upon different types of information products in varying contexts. So your disposition in order to create information should be as follows. You indicate the underlying creation process. Don't forget, it's a process. It's not only the final product, it's process. Value the process of matching an information need with an appropriate product. Again, you're specialist in specific area. Accept that the creation of information may begin initially through communicating in a range of formats and modes. Accept the ambiguity surrounding the potential value of information creation expressed in emerging formats and or modes. And they change rather fast. I mean, we can again use social media as an example. By the time Julia and I got proficient in Facebook, you folks were already on TikTok. And Julia, I'm sorry, I shouldn't use an example. You're probably much better in TikTok than I am. It's just for the sake of the example. Resist the tendency to equate format with the underlying creation process. Understand the different methods of information dissemination with different purposes are available for their use. And once again, I'll give you like 30 seconds, 1 minute, and I would love if you share your thoughts about this frame, information creation as a process. And I'm doubling the virtual ice cream for the one who will be first. Okay, I will be moving to the third frame, and I really hope that should be much more familiar for you. And I would love to see your reactions in the chat session. Information is a value. Information has a value. And to recognize the value, you give credit to the original ideas of others through proper attribution and citation. That should be familiar. You're writing papers, right? During the semester, you're writing peer-reviewed papers, and you are citing correctly your citations. Understand that intellectual property is a legal and social construct that varies by culture. Like in Russia, in China, in Bulgaria, it is understood differently than in Western Europe and in the United States. The intellectual property, that is, the legality of it. Articulate the purpose and distinguishing characteristics of copyright, fair use, open access, and the public domain. And I don't know how familiar you are with these terms. I really hope that at least you have heard about them. But as a journalist, make absolutely no mistakes. You have to be intimately familiar with those. Understand how and why some individuals or groups of individuals may be underrepresented or systematically marginalized within the system that produce and disseminate information. Now, that bullet point may seem very American because of minorities in the United States and so forth, but I can assure you that it probably applies equally to Italy. Before this conversation started, Julia and I were talking about the division in the whole Mediterranean between South and North. And it's not only economically that are marginalized people in Italy, even in the North, but usually the South, the Mediterranean South, is to a certain degree marginalized. So it definitely might be considered also as a frame for the Italian reality. Recognize issues of access or lack of access to information sources. Best example, internet access. When the pandemic hit, one of the first things that every government, not only in Europe, globally, was trying to resolve internet access. And still, there are people who have no internet access or limited internet access. And for them, information has a very different value than for us. Decide where and how their information is published. So I don't know if you're aware, but fake news are now start penetrating also the academia. Peer-reviewed journals had reported already. The Australians had caught Chinese people creating fake academic papers with artificial intelligence. So they're also predatory publishers. I'm guessing that in some of your classes that will be discussed. What should be your dispositions regarding information's value? You respect the original ideas of others by citing them, by discussing, by debating. Value the skills, time, and effort needed to produce knowledge. That's how you respect. If you start valuing it, you will start respecting it. See yourselves as contributors to the information marketplace rather than only consumers of it. And right now, considering this bullet point, you should start like Simona. Thank you very much. You have 3 scoops of virtual ice cream. You should start also contributing to the information, right? And you are inclined to examine your own information privilege. That's also a hard thing to do, but always a start. All right, now I'm gonna really wait for a minute because folks, you start responding, which I'm very, very grateful. And you can write your responses and I can read them. Absolutely, Simona. Yes, yes. The health ministry has more authority than TikTok, absolutely. Leonardo, you might finish your thought. It starts very good. And take your time and finish it when you can. And thank you. Thank you for answering. That's exactly what I'm looking for. There it is, Federico. That's the $1 million question. Let's see what the others will say. Folks, if you want to look at Federico's question and give your opinions before I share mine, that might be very helpful. Right on, Federica, right on. Oh yes, Leonardo, absolutely, the fact checkers. But Leonardo, it's not time for a discussion. We don't have time for disputes. Maybe you can continue this thought though in one of your classes. But I have a very, very good friend who is absolute anti-vaxxer, and with a reason, which I don't have time to explain right now. And when he sends me something, I am fact checking it right away. And I am sending back a snapshot of the fact check. And he counters me with saying, but who is controlling the fact checkers? How do we know that the fact checkers are reliable? So it will be a long battle. And this is exactly why the American Library Association had come up with this framework, because information literate is not just, snapping with your fingers and doing this and that. It would be a long, arduous process that has to go very deep. And we probably will have to debate it for the next 10 years or so. Your generation has to decide this. But yes, that's a good start. The fact checker is definitely a good start. Leonardo, be prepared, though, to argue that your fact checker is reliable. Yes, you have to be an expert. Yeah, you have to be, Sarah, thank you. You have to be an expert in your discipline. Absolutely. And you get the gist now, folks. Keep piling them in the chat session. I'll just move to the next slide, not because I don't want to discuss it with you. It's just because we have information, congested information that we want to go over it. And once we go over this information, we either, if we have time, we'll continue discussing it, or you can take all these points to your professors who are much smarter than I am and keep debating them in your next classes. All right, the next frame is research as inquiry. So the knowledge practices expect you to formulate questions for research based on information gaps or on re-examination of existing, possibly conflicting information. So again, everything, knowledge, information is fluctuant. Everything that we knew yesterday might not be the same today. And it's not only about the virus. It's about the galaxy. I mean, we just got a new telescope in orbit, and it gives us a much different understanding of the galaxy. And the same goes around here for us on the globe. The same goes about journalism. Journalism that has been done 30 years ago is much more different than now. And unfortunately, it might be worse because few people are doing investigative journalism. And you are the one who should be information literate to uphold the standard of your profession. So knowledge practices expect to determine an appropriate scope of investigation, to deal with complex research by breaking complex questions into simple ones, limiting the scope of investigation. Deductive and inductive process, right? Yeah, probably this is not new. Probably you knew it already from high school. Use various research methods based on need, circumstance, and type of inquiry. And I think Sarah or somebody said, you have to know very well what you're doing. Yes, and you have to know very well also how to do it. Monitor gathered information and assess for gaps or weaknesses. Timeo, right? The old Greek school. Always think, always investigate. Organize information in meaningful ways. So you have to be also organized and structure it well. Synthesize ideas gathered from multiple sources. Somebody already mentioned this in the chat session. Very good. Draw reasonable conclusions based on the analysis and interpretation of information. Okay, now what should be your disposition? You consider research as open-ended exploration and engagement with information. So when you're done with the degree, that won't be the end. You will keep learning all your life, permanent learning, right? You appreciate that a question may appear to be simple, but still disruptive and important to research. So simple doesn't mean stupid, right? Value intellectual curiosity in developing questions and learning new investigative methods. That's why you have to respect the others, right? It might seem simple, it might seem simpleton, but it might actually be disruptive. Maintain an open mind and a critical stance. Value persistence, adaptability, and flexibility, and recognize that ambiguity can benefit the research process. Seek multiple perspectives during information gathering and assessment. Seek appropriate help when needed. Follow ethical and legal guidelines in gathering and using information. This is like totally for journalists written, right? Demonstrate intellectual humility. For example, recognize your own intellectual or experiential limitations. So never too late to learn something new, right? So I'm gonna pause. It's usually here for 30 seconds. See if you wanna pitch in. I'm still handling virtual ice cream if you want. Okay, I'm going to move to the next frame, which is scholarship as conversation. So the knowledge practices are to cite the contributing work of others in their own information production. And you see that it's repetitive with another frame, but it's very important. It is extremely important to cite, not only in academia that can literally disqualify you to publish if you don't cite well, but as journalists even more, because it's about your reputation. Contribute to scholarly conversation at an appropriate level, such as local online community, guided discussions, undergraduate research journal, conference presentation, or poster session. So again, this is kind of the academic community. How do you start as a bachelor degree student to establish yourself as an expert? And that gives you the venues. I'm going to pause here just for a second. Remember what bullet point I am, because Federico shares something. Yeah, that's a good guess, Federico. Yeah, it takes time. And by the way, it seems like a lot of material, but this is the whole document. It's 36 pages. So we really try to boil it down with Dr. Conti and with the other participants to these bullet points. So if you have time, read the whole document, take mental notes, and start acting upon it, literally kind of to turn it into a second nature. Now, when I approach something and I want to be information literate, what do? You assess the situation and you decide which, by using the dispositions, and you decide which point from the knowledge practices is appropriate to use. Yeah, it sounds like a lot, but that's what means to be information literate in the 21st century, right? Critically evaluate contributions made by others in participatory information environments. Identify the contribution that particular articles, books, and other scholarly pieces make to disciplinary knowledge. Practically start becoming an expert in your field by knowing already the existing knowledge. So what are your dispositions towards scholarship as conversation? Recognize you are often entering into an ongoing scholarly conversation and not a finished conversation, right? When you start hitting each other, I'm totally kidding. Just calm down and continue next time. Seek out conversations taking place in your research area. See yourself as contributors to scholarship rather than only consumers of it. And we talked already about this. There is nothing to be afraid. Start voicing an opinion, even if it's wrong. If you're in the right milieu, if you're in the right environment, people will help you. They won't laugh at you. Recognize that scholarly conversations take place in various venues. So nowadays, totally okay to be online as we're doing it right now, right? Only 3 or 4 years ago, it mostly occurred in face-to-face situations. Suspend judgment on the value of a particular piece of scholarship until the larger context for the scholarly conversation is better understood. So be tolerant. Understand the responsibility that comes with entering the conversation through participatory channels. Value user-generated content and evaluate contributions made by others. Recognize that systems privilege authorities and that not having a fluency in the language and process of a discipline disempowers your ability to participate and engage. And that bullet point completely fits the conversation that we lead right now, because we don't lead it in your native language. We should have led it in Italian. We lead it in English. And I should be very cognizant of your impediment. And respectively, when you're talking with somebody else who might not be fluent in your language, you also have to understand it. It's when somebody doesn't respond, it's not because they're stupid, it's just because the language might be a barrier, right? Tolerance, right? I'm gonna pause here for a second and see what Luca has to say. Glad to read this, Luca. Excellent. Yeah, if you can help it. And childhood sciences, oh gosh, that's so important. You're preparing the next generation. Keep it coming, folks. Thank you, Luca. Scoop of ice cream for you. All right. So the very last frame, searching as strategic exploration. The knowledge practices are expecting you to determine the initial scope of the task required to meet your information needs, to identify interested parties such as scholars, organizations, governments, and industries who might produce information about a topic, and then determine how to access that information. As a journalist, that totally apply to you. You utilize divergent, for example, brainstorming, or convergent, for example, selecting the best source thinking when searching. Remember, the previous frame was talking about choosing the tools and the methods. That reinforces this. Match information needs and search strategies to appropriate search tools. Design and refine needs and search strategies as necessary based on search results. So these bullets kind of expect you a lot to do work with librarians, learn from them. Understand how information systems, for example, collections of recorded information, are organized in order to access relevant information. So now you have to really start understanding what librarians are doing. Use different types of searching language, for example, controlled vocabulary, keywords, natural language appropriately. And I put a link for you to control vocabulary if you're not familiar with it, because it's kind of the most out of your hands that you have to know. Otherwise, you know how to use keywords. You use already keywords. You use natural language. When you Google, you use natural language. So manage searching processes and results effectively. What does effectively mean? Again, somebody just asked in the chat session, so it will take time and practice for me. Yes, yes, nobody can tell you you're using it effectively. When you start using it and you're using it for a while, you would find out what effectively means for you. It's a very individual process. All right, so dispositions. Exhibit mental flexibility and creativity. Understand that first attempts at searching do not always produce adequate results. Patience, right? Realize that information sources vary greatly in content and format and have varying relevance and value depending on the needs and nature of the search. Seek guidance from experts such as librarians, researchers, and professionals. Recognize the value of browsing and other serendipitous methods of information gathering. Persist in the face of search challenges and know when they have enough information to complete the information task. Okay, and while I'm reading Francesca's entry, I would like you to go to the next slide, and whether you want to use the QR code or just click on the link, or yes, thank you. Somebody will put it in the chat session. Please now take the survey session regarding the framework that is applied to the United States. And when you're done, please short Y for yes in the chat session will let us know when most of us are done so we can continue. Thank you. How is everyone doing? Do you need more time? Anyone needs more time, or can we go ahead? Can you give me yay or nay in the chat session? Thank you, Luca. Giving you a virtual chocolate. Excellent. Very good. Oh, gosh, you are really working like a team. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So thank you, everyone. So now we went in extent discussing information literacy, which has been ruling the last 2 decades, the librarian horizon. And for a while, though, we are now talking also about digital literacy. And the American Library Association Digital Literacy Task Force defines literacy as, and you can read it on your own, the ability to use information and communication technologies to find, evaluate, create, and communicate information requiring both cognitive and technical skills. And this is how I understand it. I might be wrong. You might have different opinion, which is totally fine. This is how I understand the difference between information literacy and digital literacy. With information literacy, as we saw the frames, is mostly acquiring information, whether if it's through text or through videos. But now with digital literacy, we have to have also the technical skills to acquire this information. And that's why we're talking about digital literacy, right? Then digital literacy 5 years ago was trumped. Jennifer Sparrow, she's University of Penn. She started talking about digital fluency. The digital literacy is not sufficient. And what is the difference between digital literacy and digital fluency? I hope you will read this carefully at home. I won't stay very, very long. I mean, besides that, digital fluency trumps digital literate. What is the difference? Well, the difference, she claims, is that knowing the tools, knowing about the technology is not enough. You have to be fluent in the technology. It's not enough to know that TikTok exists. You have to be fluent in TikTok, and not only fluent in, having fun, but fluent in your area, which is journalism. And for Luca or somebody else who was in child development, in these studies, how can you use effectively TikTok to teach children? So that's what's digital fluent, and this is why it's so important to know it. And now that we covered it so briefly, very, very quickly, can you take the next segment of the survey, please? And Dr. Conte, thank you for copying and pasting in the chat session. Once you're done, folks, this one is short. Please yay me in the chat session so I can go to the next slide, so I can continue. Thank you, Luca. Gosh, if we play Kahoot, you would be the Kahoot winner. Wow. Oh, that wasn't nice to say. The other ones are doing also well. Don't envy Luca. Everybody's doing well. All right. So now that we covered information literacy, digital literacy, and we also kind of got acquainted with digital fluency. I want to give you a little bit more information about digital fluency. And I'm giving you readings. If you want to read, people that followed Jennifer Sparrow. So check this at home if you can. Knowles, 2018, he was working with Jennifer Sparrow in that direction. So he adds that in order to be innovative and successful online, which is practically education 4.0 and respectively education industry 4.0, we will be touching on this later on, they require to be innovative and successful online. You have to be digitally fluent. That's why it's so important to at least be acquainted with this idea, with this concept. And one more slide, which has pictures. Don't you love pictures? Much better than reading, right? Totally kidding. You still have to read, but pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? So they practically, I love this one because it practically tells you, you really should stop thinking about it when you're doing it. To be fluent, you have to be unconsciously competent. So practically from your cortex, you have to bring it back right to the vertebrae, to the reptilian brain, right? It has to be a reflex. You should not think about it. This is what means being digitally fluent with technologies. You shouldn't think, oh, well, gosh, where do I press now? It should be like, oh, TikTok, I know how to do it. I'm going to think more about the content now. I'm going to teach with it, right? Makes sense. Okay. And another very short segment, hearing that about digital fluency, please respond.
Se lo fate da cellulare dovete spostare perché sono 5 possibilità. State attenti perché da cellulare vi viene fuori solo le prime 2 che sono entrambe negative, ovviamente non è così. Plamen, I was explaining that if you open the survey from mobile, you just see the negative answers. You have to switch to swipe up a little bit.
Good. Thank you. Those should be short surveys, folks. When you're done, please yay me in the chat session so we can continue. We're doing well on time, though. Ah, Cecilia, excellent. You beat Luca. Yay, kidding. It's not a contest. It's important to take the survey. Thank you. All right. Next slide. So the industry, the corporate world, so digital fluency was discussed in academia. The corporate world now came up with very similar standards also. They start talking about digital competences. And it's important again, because whether we're journalists or teachers, most of us will go into the corporate world and we have to know what they're expecting from us. And that's why I shared this information with you. The information is now from last year, from the end of last year, and this information changes quickly. So if you want to do your own research, remember being information literate means to do your own research. Google digital competences and try to find out what else is expected. Translate digital competence in Italian and try to see what's the equivalent that is expected for digital competence in Italy. And if you are kind enough to share with me your results, gosh, I would be very grateful. I literally will buy you physical ice cream if you do that. I would be very appreciative. So just 30 seconds on digital competences. Again, it would be good to click on this link and study it at home and check it and researched at home. And another survey. It's based on digital competencies. Let's see, what do you think about digital competencies?
Sì, si apre soltanto se cliccate avanti, perché è un pochino più complesso. I don't know why, maybe you know that, but you have to click next as the immediate thing, the first thing to do.
That's why we decided, I cannot remember the reason, but that was the only way to get around the constraints of Google Forms. So yeah, and I understand that you folks probably becoming tired of being questioned, but we really will appreciate your answers. Oh, thank you, Francesca. I learned something, yeah. Is it okay if I move to the next slide, or you still need more time? Thanks, Serena. Okay, thank you. Okay, so to recapitulate, what is research in the 21st century look like? So I deliberately colored in red data intensive and collaborative and data sharing. In the medieval time, research was very solitary process. You know, the monks in the monastery, each of them in their cell, researching, right, writing cool stuff. Then in the 20th century, well, here and there, we'll meet at conferences, we'll, you know, confer, we'll talk, but then go back to our offices, lock up ourselves and keep research. With the internet, research became explicitly collaborative. With the internet, big data, all of you had heard big data. It's out of the question that this hasn't perpetrated the pop culture, the magazines and the newspapers. Big data means data intensive. So research means not only reading, but also learning how to handle data. And I gave you again pictures instead of trying to explain with words. Practically, you can see what the research process looks like, especially with the data. How do you analyze data? On my screen, probably it's not very well to see, but that's why I gave you a link. You can study it in your screen. I gave you also the link to the Pinterest, where I borrowed this information from, so you can follow up and learn more if you want. You can Google research in the 21st century and see what people have to say. In that case, though, don't Google it, go to Google Scholar at least, if not to your library databases. And if I understand correctly, there's a librarian today here, right? And she can definitely help you research peer-reviewed, heavy-duty literature regarding this issue. Long story short, though, you see that research skills is now part of the professional skills that Industry 4.0 would be expecting from you. And if you click on the next slide, you would be having a link to the next portion of the survey that's pertaining your research skills in the 21st century. Oh gosh, that's a good question. While you folks answering, while you folks taking the survey, I'm going to answer it. Thank you, Federico. Okay, you folks ready to move to the next slide, or do you need more time? Thanks, Leonardo. Let's make sure that you're not the only one, though. Okay, Luca is giving me fingers up. So, okay, so keep talking about 21st century skills. That start becoming kind of, at least in my opinion, because I'm collecting this information, every 5 years, they're trying to predict for the next 5 years what would be the skills expected overall in all industries. And you can see that in 2020, it's a little bit different. Some of the skills overlap, but you have also different skills. Like emotional intelligence, right now there is a talk about this, but critical thinking will be always there. In 2020, you can see that actually it's going up the ladder. In 2015, it's in the 4th place. 2020 is in the 2nd place. In order, though, to do complex problem solving, you saw that it's in one of the frames. You have to be information literate, right? Industry 4.0 would be expecting at least some of these skills. And it's good to, you don't have to memorize them, but it's good to kind of check them and see what am I good at? Which of the skills I think I do have, and which of the skills I might be good at, I might want to acquire. And that is now, I just got this like a month ago, right before the work with the students from Finland. I run across this information for UK, that skills-based education and online learning are top priorities for adults and employers in the United Kingdom. And it's very logical. That's because of the pandemic, right? The pandemic changed a lot of attitudes and a lot of approaches. All right, and we are up for the next segment of the survey, if you please. Thank you. Thanks, Julie. All right, thanks, Simona. Thank you. Okay, now I'm gonna take a big curve. We're gonna go in a different direction. And for your great satisfaction, there won't be a survey soon. That rapid succession of surveys will cease for a little bit so you can take a break. And I truly appreciate your patience and your stamina, survey taking stamina. Thank you. So now talking about United Kingdom, that online learning are top priorities in UK. This pandemic getting us into Zoom mode. I mean, most of the people were using Zoom. Go figure out why it's not the best company. But it has competitors, Microsoft Teams. Some people were using Google Meets. At a certain point in the middle of last year, people started talking about fatigue, Zoom fatigue, that online, that what we're doing right now, people were doing it for 8 hours in a row every day, and that was just driving them crazy, especially because they were used to face-to-face interaction, right? And this was the point also last year when this prediction about virtual reality that was pushed at least by EDUCAUSE since 2015, but remained dormant. All of a sudden, this idea about using virtual education in virtual reality all of a sudden got really very strong impetus. So this two-dimensional platforms like Zoom, Teams, Meets, the idea is now to be replaced by virtual worlds. And I'm giving you links to some of the virtual worlds. Like the most we played at my university was Space VR and Engage VR. Space VR was purchased in 2020 by Microsoft. They saw the potential and they bought it, and they started doing incredible things. They are still paying people in Space VR where you can go and they can train you and they can do everything for you for free, just to get you hooked up to their virtual space, not to Engage VR. Whereas Engage VR has very steep licensing. In order to use Engage VR, it's expensive, but it has incredible teaching and learning materials already developed in it. Then Spatial VR came last year, which was using really very cool tactics of amalgam between two-dimensional and three-dimensional, meaning that you can be in Spatial VR with the goggles, but you can also open it two-dimensionally on your computer. Spatial VR is semi-free. Certain portions you can use for free. Other advanced, you have to pay. Verbella is free. Mozilla Hubs is free. Long story short, it's really gaining momentum. And more training starts happening in virtual reality. And that's why I think that for you, in order to be, if not digitally fluent, at least digital literate, you should know about this trend, because it's really gaining speed very quickly. And it won't be surprised if by the time you're graduating, you might be doing some of your learning in virtual reality. So last December, when is it? No, November 22nd, Engage VR announced the first school in virtual reality. It's open in Florida. And then about that time, Zuckerberg said that Facebook won't be Facebook, it would be metaverse. And of course, he's after the money, right? We have to constantly think about this. He did it with a lot of splash. It's out of the question that you haven't seen probably his presentation in YouTube, or if you haven't seen it, you can see it in YouTube. Whereas Microsoft very, very quietly, 2 weeks after Zuckerberg, announced Microsoft Mesh. And Mesh, according to their announcement, is about to replace this year, sometimes in the fall, it's about to replace Teams. And Mesh practically is nothing else but Teams on steroids. You would be able to participate like we're doing it right now, two-dimensionally, but you can also participate with your avatar practically in their virtual world in Space VR. And the idea is that slowly everything will be shifted completely into the virtual world. And that's why I'm saying that I thought that we should expose you to this idea. Naturally, the Icelanders start making fun of Zuckerberg. Remember, folks, that Make America Great Again trumps when all of the European countries start ridiculing him by saying, make Iceland great, make Norway great. The Icelanders did pretty much the same thing with Zuckerberg, saying, watch the video, you would love it. And there were very sharp criticism also why metaverse is a very good idea, but Zuckerberg is definitely not the right person to spearhead in it, exactly as Elon Musk buying Twitter might not be the best idea. But again, you're a journalist, you might prove me wrong, I might be wrong, but I don't think that super rich people, billionaires, should be ahead of ideas which have a lot of ethical discussions before they happen. So I'm giving you here another video to get a sense of XR, practically stays for extended reality, which is the umbrella term for virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality. If you wanna, if you don't know much about it, I just gave you kind of the keywords. This is recorded if you forget the keywords. Dr. Conti, maybe you can type in the chat session. Extended reality is the umbrella term for virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, and then you can Google it. That you can Google. I mean, you can Google Scholar, but you can go also Google, or contact me, and I will share with you everything that I know about. Give me just a second. I'll just give you the link to the blog that I maintain, and in that blog, I have plenty of information about all of the realities because I'm very interested about it. There's the chat. There is the chat. All right. You can contact me later on and we can go in depth. Dr. Conte and I were talking that maybe we can collaborate in the future, and I can we can have a different discussion about the realities. Right now, it's just good to get exposed to the idea. So in addition to the realities which might change education, there is a lot of other technologically based stuff that's going on that we have to be aware as students, not as librarian students, as students in general. And I'm listing them for you. The Google Book Project, which some of you might have been old enough to remember, it started 2008, 2009. Google, of course, abandoned it. And that's another reason why billionaires and Silicon Valley companies shouldn't be left to be in charge of these issues. If you remember anything about the Google Book Project, Google wanted to digitize all of the books in the world, mostly from academic libraries. And the academic libraries were very leery. They were very cautious about this, okay? Now the libraries are countering this with the Open Online Library Project. And then last year, the NFTs hit in. So if you want to Google NFT, blockchain, those are concepts, not only definitions, but concepts that it's very good to have in the back of your head. OER is huge in the United States, not so much in Europe. That stays for open educational resources. That's mostly because the United States is a very different market than the European countries. In the European countries, government controls a lot. Here, everything is decentralized. As a result, publishers become very predatory. They're charging exorbitant amount of money for textbooks, which now is a reaction by a lot of universities who are helping faculty create their materials as open educational resources, so students don't have to charge that much. Copyright law, I don't have to go over it. It was mentioned as one, in 3 of the frames that we went over. Okay. So talking about the Open Online Library, Jim Han, he just moved to Penn State, I believe. He was Urbana, which is a great university. So he has this idea of global virtual library that at least the catalogs would be completely accessible everywhere. And he might do it actually in our lifetime. And for me, it epitomizes Michael Douglas in this movie Disclosure, 1994. If you haven't seen it, it might not seem very attractive to you because 1994, and right now the computer-generated effects are way more impressive than almost 30 years ago. But practically, Michael Douglas is showing the idea that Jim Han is after for Global Virtual Library. And it's good for you to know, again, as a regular student, not only as a library student. Okay, so let's now address this several, again, terms or processes, depends how you look at them. If I can take, though, just a pause for a second, so I can have a sip of tea. And in the meanwhile, would you please share with me in the chat session, how many of these terms have you heard? How many of these terms do you know? How many of these terms have you been kind of using, familiar with? Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, Education 4.0, and artificial intelligence. And if it's nothing shameful to share, I'm asking these questions because, being cognizant of the time, I want to know how much in details I should go with the next slides. If you know some of this information, I might be skipping some slides. Thank you, Sarah. And yeah, that's totally normal. I mean, artificial intelligence is used in the newspapers a lot, and yeah, and the Internet of Things. Yeah, totally normal. Yeah, very, very normal. Yeah, Education 4.0 and Industry 4.0, it's kind of in the background because it's still in the making. So it's good that you know about Internet of Things and artificial intelligence, but start educating yourself also about the other two, and if you can discuss them. So how does virtual reality, extended reality fits into these concepts? In my puny mind, in my opinion, immersive technologies, extended realities, as hot as they are right now, they will be sucked into Internet of Things and respectively into artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence probably will remain eventually the umbrella term, and it would be meaning all this stuff: Internet of Things, virtual reality, extended reality. We, of course, will live to see, but I'm just trying to help you orient yourself in the jungle of this information, because it really becomes a lot of information. Thank you, Matteo. Thank you, everybody that is responding. So I'm sharing here with you a video about automated return of books. That little white thing here that looks like a vacuum cleaner. I bet that at least half of you have these vacuum cleaners that like robots. That thing is not a vacuum cleaner, it just returns books. So cool, isn't it? Absolutely cool. Again, ethical aspects still needs to be discussed. We have to think about this. Now, machine learning, how many of you had heard about machine learning? And that would be also probably huge in journalism. Regarding processing of excessive textual information. I'm going to keep going ahead, but if you can share with me in the chat session how many of you had heard about machine learning would be also helpful. So where it is, I'm sorry. I'm skipping one slide. Probably I should have switched them. So machine learning is one part in the definition of digital humanities. So respectively, share with me in the chat session if you had heard about digital humanities, if you had heard about machine learning. So digital humanities, I'm currently looking for a job, and I've applied at least for 3 positions which are looking for digital humanities librarian. This is how fast everything moves. Only 5 years ago, nobody would even announce such, nobody would even ask in a job description about digital humanities. And now we have digital humanities librarians. That's how hot digital humanities is. What is digital humanities? Google it and you will see that there is no standard definition. Everybody defines digital humanities differently. One part of the definition is machine learning. It's in order to be a digital humanities specialist, you know how to do machine learning. You know how to teach a computer to process large amount of texts for you. Do you see the potential for journalism? So by processing, I mean, it really gives you the meaning of the text. It doesn't even it doesn't only group it, but it gives you kind of a conclusion that only 5 years ago, only human could do. So that's how you maybe can grasp the concept of digital humanities and of respectively machine learning. And now Industry 4.0, I shared the picture with you. Again, if it's not well visible on your computer, look on my computer, look on your computer and you can see big data analytics, Internet of Things, artificial intelligence and machine learning, cybersecurity, that's very important. So virtual reality and augmented reality. So Industry 4.0 would be expecting you to be, if not digitally fluent, at least digitally literate about these segments. Okay, and I'm reaching the end of my time, and that's why I'm kind of going a little bit faster now. So hearing all this information, and I'll respond to your questions, folks, while you're taking the survey. Please take the next segment of the survey and try to absorb all this information. If it's too much, we record it, and hopefully in the future we can go into more depth. We can meet again and go into more depth. Julie, it's 10:30. What's my limit? Do I have to wrap it up, or can we? If Luca goes, that means that I'm probably infringing in other people's time.
I don't know. I don't know. Anna Maria, what's your opinion?
If we leave the slide continuation to do as homework, I don't know. It's not a problem for me personally, but probably student, other appointment.
We literally
can we at least finish the questionnaire, the surveys?
I have 5.
And,
yeah, I need 5 more minutes.
Okay, that's, I think 5 minutes is perfect, because for instance, Luca is already leaving due to train, and you know, it's evening for us. But I already prepared an email with all of the materials and all the links and your nice slides. So I will share everything with them later, if it's okay for you.
And I apologize to everybody. I mean,
No, absolutely. It was very, very interesting. So no need to apologize. We are happy to stay a little bit longer anyway.
Well, it's late in the evening probably for you folks, so I understand this. While you're taking the survey, I'll just cover, we just have one more segment and then kind of the end of the session survey. So we're almost there.
That's perfect. And those the students are sharing the same.
Okay.
Yeah, but probably the only thing besides that, a lot of training already happens in extensive reality, whether if it's augmented and virtual. Mercedes is training their people, nursing, medicine, they're starting extensively using a training. Like at a conference, the fact that I heard was that orthopedists, foot doctors trained with virtual reality, they're not better than the other ones, but they're more effective. They just finish faster. So it's absolutely, we know that within 3 to 5 years, well, we don't know the speed because we don't know when the gadgets will become affordable, but it's definitely will be part of education. Whether if it's art, there it is augmented reality for history, for anthropology, whether if it's journalism. Watch this movie, folks. If you can watch Clouds Over Sidra with goggles, that's about Syrian refugees. Empathy and journalism, virtual reality, those are now words that go together. Again, whether if it's art, it's coming. Any kind of art. Billie Eilish just had a concert also in Old Space VR. And I'm using Billie Eilish because you don't remember Jean-Michel Jarre, but Jean-Michel Jarre did a concert for New Year's Eve in VR. And I watched it. It was great. And then the haptic devices. Now you can see that this person already moves 5 fingers. Right now we can move 3 fingers. So the moment we have haptic devices with 5 fingers, that means that physics, chemistry, all of the laboratories will be moved to virtual reality because it's cheaper, it's safer, it has a lot of advantages. And if you don't mind taking this 4 last survey, and then we'll move to the evaluating the last survey, that would be it. Okay, and I'll respond to Federico and anybody else who is interested in this. The slides got mixed up, so I'm gonna put in the chat session the very last, the very last link for the profilo sociodemografico. It's okay. These things happen. Don't worry. Maybe I did it. Most probably I did it.
Sorry.
Yeah, if you have a better link, absolutely, we'll use your link. The most important thing is to get demographic feedback, right?
Yeah.
So you're better than I am. I'll rely completely on you. And
No. It was just that I have already the link.
Oh.
I share it now.
Excellent.
In the chat.
Excellent.
I will share it again. Sorry.
While you're taking the very last survey, I'll respond to Federico and to Francesca. So hold a second. Okay, Federico insists to know how many years. And Federico, I really want to answer to you, but what I see, I'm following practically the New Horizon report, which was issued by EDUCAUSE. And I can give you, in my blog, I have a lot of EDUCAUSE references, and I have the New Horizon reports. And if you look at them, you really don't have to read the whole ones because they outline them very well. But EDUCAUSE in 2016 really said 3 to 5 years, which meant that by 2021 we had to have it. By 2018, they realized that it won't happen that fast, and they start really kind of modeling it. They're non-committal. So, and I'm not blaming them, because everything depends on when these devices will become as what I'm trying to say, ubiquitous as cell phones. Right now, we have a penetration of close to 98% of cell phones around the globe, which makes them very useful, easy devices to use for education. The idea is for the cell phones to move into headsets, whether those be the virtual reality headsets or augmented reality headsets, we still don't know. One will merge with the other eventually. And those would be the cell phones. You would be calling also from the goggles. And then we can use them for education, because right now, being between 300 and 500 bucks each, you can calculate how expensive it would be for a school to furbish a lab with goggles. It's really prohibitive for a lot of schools. And that's what hinders it. That's what slows it down. The expectation is that at a certain point, everybody will be having such a device and will be using it for teaching and learning, if it makes sense. Okay, now let me see to Francesca. And if you want to talk more about this, I just don't want to, I don't feel comfortable holding the others. Maybe we can do another session and discuss it in depth. Yes, Francesca, those are ethical issues. Ethical issues are habitually not resolved well in market economy. One of the disadvantages of capitalism, one of the weaknesses of the capitalism is that, again, money controls, not, you know, humanity. This is why digital humanity, by the way, is so important, because we'll deal also with the ethical aspects. And that's also not a long conversation. I really kind of want to say yes or no and to respond briefly. But those are complex issues which practically your generation would be resolving. And if you folks want to stay, by the way, I would love to stay, not because morning for me and evening for you. I just love, you know, the end of the discussion conversations usually are the most productive ones. Yeah, for the philosophers here, we did 3 years ago with a professor of philosophy. Her student philosophy club wanted to discuss the ethics of autonomous cars. And I was fascinated. I just loved being part of it. Right. It can be an incredible journalist can be very, helpful. The journalism profession became very ambiguous because, yeah, but yeah, I have so much faith in your generation. You really can rectify something that my generation messed up, not only the ecology, but also moral norms, a lot of issues that you really have to take to heart and persist, because it's so easy to slide down the slippery slope and, you know, do easy journalism. Yeah, absolutely. Ask more. And if you're tired, if you want to go, that's totally fine. But if something comes up in your mind later tonight or tomorrow, but you have my webpage, whether if it's email or any of the social media, just shoot me information, or share with your instructors, with your professors, and they'll share with me. And we actually, that would be much more interesting to think together, to think as a collective.
No, Plamen, I have to say, you were really refreshing. So much new ideas and things to think about. It was very nice. So thank you.
It would be very nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish to thank you, Plamen, really very much for this workshop offered to students in Parma. I am sure they have been inspired by you. Before I close, I would like to introduce to you, Plamen, and to the students, the team of Parma, or the project Digitale4U, project on transliteracy. And so, Maria Valero, can you open the video, Maria? And Nicoletta Capassi, they are teachers from humanities, and also Susanna Del Carlo, I don't know if she's here, who is an instructor librarian. And so this is a Parma team with Julia, you already know, and all the students not only can reach you, continue to remain in contact with you, but I hope they remain in contact with all of us, teachers and instructors, and we can continue this travel journey, very interesting. I said in the beginning, into the future. Now I can correct me, into the present.
I would love to work with you folks to continue this, but I just want to say that all of the things goes to the students. I really appreciate you guys. When you start talking to me, I learn a lot from you. Just looking and reading what you say confirms some of my thoughts, and also makes me work harder in that direction. Really, all of the kudos goes to the students. Thank you. Thank you to all of you.
Thank you to all the students, I agree.
Grazie, grazie di cuore a tutti.
Grazie, thank you.
Grazie, thank you very much.
Ciao Plamen, grazie. Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks. I'm really looking forward to, I mean, if you can stay in contact and keep working together, it would be very good for me. Thank you.
Yes, and if we get questions or things like that, we will share with you.
Okay. Well, I wish you a good evening. I don't know if it's appropriate. Alcohol is prohibited on this campus, but I wish you red wine and pizza for dinner. Anything good that you can afford. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
You
Thank
too,
you all.
folks. Yeah, hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, folks.
Bye.